YouTube, it's the battle of the Z Folds. We're going from the Z Fold 3 to the Z Fold 4 to the Z Fold 5 and breaking down the full comparison amongst all three and if it's worth the upgrade or not, or whether you should save some bucks and try to get an older version. Let's get into it. How much has actually changed? We're gonna literally see the progression from 2021 to 2022 to 2023. First area of discussion is design. So the first place we're gonna start at is with the weight. We have 271 grams on the Z Fold 3 versus 263 grams on the Z Fold 4, down to 253 grams with the Z Fold 5. So as you can see, year after year it's just gotten lighter and lighter. W from Samsung and that right. All three of these have the ability of nano SIM or eSIM, as well as all three of these have the same water resistance of IPX8. And the X means there's no dust resistance. So no matter what Z Fold you choose to grab, please be aware of dust. Keep it minimal, wipe it down on the usual, and try to avoid dust from getting anywhere underneath these displays. And speaking of dust, another area to discuss that's definitely different amongst all three of these is because every generation they change, that is the hinge. And this is something that has to do with the dust rejection and the dust getting under the display. So we have the Z Fold 3's hinge right here, which is very, honestly, wow, it's very it's very springy, okay. And then we move into the Z Fold's 4 hinge, which it still kind of has this spring to it, but it's definitely not as springy and as loose feeling as the Z Fold 3. And then we move to the brand new release, the Confident hinge. You can see, man, you can definitely feel the evolution of the hinge amongst all three of these generations. All three of these are also rocking the same Armor aluminum frame, so there's not really much of a difference in build quality amongst these three. All right, next up, let's talk cover displays. These are the front OLED panels. I'm gonna break down the specs in between the differences and then we'll get into the true nitty gritty, the things that matter. So we have a 6.2 inch 832 by 2268 with a 25 by 9 aspect ratio on the Z Fold 3. Then we went to a 904 by 2316 pixels with 23.1 by 9 aspect ratio because the bezels decreased going from this one to this one, and we got a slightly wider front OLED panel, which was a W. So amongst these two, same front cover OLED panel. From the Z Fold 3 going into either one of these, you're seeing an upgrade as far as the front OLED panel goes. But between these two, no difference. Okay, let's talk the main OLED panel. This is the main display that Samsung wants you to use. This is where they put all of the focus. On the Z Fold 3, we have a 7.6 inch 1768 by 2208 with a 374 ppi pixel density. Then we move into the Z Fold 4 / Z Fold 5 with a 7.6 inch 1812 by 2176 with a 373 ppi pixel density. And one of the main differences you're gonna see amongst all of these panels is when you take them out to sunlight. And that's where you see the separation of generations by far. So as far as direct sunlight goes, we're gonna do it like this. We're gonna lay them all down because it's hard to hold all three of these in two hands. But at the end of the day, just me telling you, from me looking at it, obviously this is the inferior in brightness, this gets better, and this is the best. Let's go to the inner panel. And the story is pretty much the same, and it's so obvious right here that this is the least, this is better, but this is the best. And when it comes to the inner panel, there's a huge difference in between these two. Let me make sure that and you can see we're at max on this one. There's a massive difference on the inner display panel as far as brightness goes in between the Z Fold 5 and the Z Fold 4. The Z Fold 3 just can't compete in either way. But again, if I was using this as a deciding factor between the two, it's obvious that the Z Fold 5 is so much more superior to the Z Fold 4 as far as inner display. This is the main display, mind you, brightness. So, and speaking of, we have 1200 peak nits on the Z Fold 3, 1200 peak nits on the Z Fold 4, and then we finally bump up to 1750 on the Z Fold 5. Samsung decided to compete with all of the 1700 plus nits out there. Now, the Z Fold 3 can't hold a candle to the Z Fold 5 at all. But honestly, going from the Z Fold 3 to the Z Fold 5, that is the upgrade when it comes to OLED panels. Now from the 4 to the 5, the upgrade is mainly in the peak brightness, which matters because when you're out there in direct sunlight, this is the one I want in my corner, the Z Fold 5. Now let's get into platform amongst these. Now, obviously they're all the Samsung platform and you can upgrade each one of these to the brand new One UI 5.1, except for the Z Fold 5 has 5.1.1, obviously due to generation gaps. But what's truly different is what's under the hood. With the Z Fold 3, Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 5nm technology. Then we moved into the later Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 4nm technology with the Z Fold 4, and now we're at the brand new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 4nm technology still, but highly improved as far as optimization and performance from the previous models, especially coming from the Z Fold 3. So Z Fold 3 to the Z Fold 5, you're definitely gonna feel that horsepower and that chip increase in battery life in other ways. We're gonna talk about battery soon. It gets a little but we'll talk about it. Another thing amongst these is the storage differences. The Z Fold 3 and the Z Fold 4 both have the same UFS 3.1 storage, while the Z Fold 5 has the new UFS 4.0 storage. Now, as far as RAM goes, all of these are rocking the 12 gigabytes of RAM, so no difference there. Now let's talk battery. And this is funny because the battery is the exact same 4,400 milliamp hour battery across all three of these. The only thing that's different is you will only allow 11 watts wireless versus the 15 watts wireless that you're allowed for recharging, but they all can do 25 watt wired charging. So what is the difference in battery? The real determining factor in between these three is what's under the hood physically as far as the Snapdragon and the optimization or lack thereof. The Z Fold 3 battery is no better than the Z Fold 4 battery, as the Z Fold 4 battery is no better than the Z Fold 5. So every generation it did improve, but it's incremental improvements in battery life. So we haven't seen a physical change in battery. The only reason we have seen some improvement is due to optimization. And the most optimized out of the three is by far the Z Fold 5, which is gonna yield you the best battery life easily. But if I'm trying to make a decision from the Z Fold 4 to the Z Fold 5, as far as like upgrading and so forth in battery, I wouldn't say that the Z Fold 5 battery improvement is just warranting the full out upgrade. You would have to weigh the other factors into the decision and not just that one alone. Next up, let's discuss what's on the rear of these bad boys, and that is the cameras. And for the camera test, I took you guys outside, snapped a bunch of photos and video in the same place, same conditions. I got you guys, so let's go outside. And then we have the front-facing camera on the Z Fold 5. We gotta go through each one individually, but let me know which one looks better. Man, there's gonna be a lot of images up there. All right, so here we have the Z Fold 5 rear-facing camera. Gotta show you guys the quality. Got the sun out, it's hitting me. What is it looking like? Is it competing? Is it keeping up? Did we get an improvement or did we not? Let me know down in the comment section below. Whew! All right, so you guys saw what the cameras have to offer from all three of these. From the Z Fold 3 going to the Z Fold 4 or the Z Fold 5, there is a difference physically and camera hardware. But from the Z Fold 4 to the Z Fold 5, there is no difference in camera hardware. There's only the image processing that has changed. You have Bluetooth 5.2 on these two, which is the Z Fold 3 and Z Fold 4, and then we have the latest or the newer Bluetooth 5.3 on the Z Fold 5, if that matters to you. And before I start to wrap this up in user experience, I want to just touch back on something performance-wise. This is just on numbers and on spec sheets, but the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is blowing the water out of the Z Fold Snapdragon and the Z Fold 4. So performance is something that's just like really high to you. The Z Fold 5 is by far the best performing machine out of these three. Now let's talk user experience. The most important experience, the most important thing in any review. When you go to use these devices, what is it like? Now, the Z Fold 3, let's start here. This was when the Z Fold started to mature and become something that people could possibly risk investing in. Now, I only say risk because, you know, let's be honest, it was not a terrible investment, but over the years of using one of these, you're gonna see its wear and tear. As you guys can see, the under or the inner display screen protector at that point is starting to show a little lift. But all in all, this device is in great condition for its time. But as far as from a user experience standpoint, there were those, shortcomings of battery life. The performance was fair of its time, but in comparison to these, it's very telling of the developmental phase of the Z Fold. Now, when we get into the Z Fold 4, it got lighter. It didn't get much else like to really signify like true changes. It was just mostly refinements. And the user experience on the Z Fold 4 was actually really good in comparison to the Z Fold 3. It gave you just a little oomph in battery, a lot more performance in comparison, and so forth. But it was just a fine tuning yet again. And going from the Z Fold 4, user experience wise, to the Z Fold 5, it's the same thing as it was before as far as it being fine-tuning and refinement. This is the best hinge out of all three. This is the most confident hinge thus far because, only time will tell that I've felt out of all of my Z Folds. The Z Fold 4 was good. It got better. But honestly, after having and owning the Z Fold 5, this hinge right here, this is the one. I think Samsung finally has their money hinge in the Z Fold 5. Samsung actually has their money foldable in the Z Fold 5 from a user experience perspective and just all around encompassing developmental truth. This thing is well refined. It's a well-oiled machine in the Z Fold world. So it's not hard to make a decision between the three. If I was a first-time Z Fold buyer, it's easily the Z Fold 5. Now, where it gets complicated is in the world of upgrading. Is it worth it? Now, I've seen in my comment section, people jumping from the Z Fold 3 to the Z Fold 5 and feeling that refinement and refreshment and feeling the upgrade. So from the Z Fold 3 to the Z Fold 5, I can say that there's enough refinement from here to here to feel the upgrade. Is it gonna be massive and crazy and just like so refreshing as if you're using something totally new? To a degree, yes, and then to a degree, no. But it is the refinements that we've needed out of the Z Fold up until this point. Now, when you're talking Z Fold 4 to the Z Fold 5, I'm gonna be honest. The refinements are refreshing and they're gonna feel good to you. You're gonna appreciate them because it's like some of those things that were lacking on the Z Fold 4 that are a little bit more present on the Z Fold 5, but realistically, between these two devices, I don't want to say that there's much of a warrant to upgrade year after year. You know what I mean? But if you got it, you got it. You feel me? And you can enjoy it. And if anyone has jumped from the Z Fold 4 to the Z Fold 5, comment down below because I've seen some comments like raving about it and saying, oh, I feel the upgrade. And I've seen some that's like, hesitant, holding on to the Z Fold 4, didn't even ship it back yet, trying to make that decision. So let me know. If you went from the Z Fold 4 to the Z Fold 5, did you feel the upgrade? Was it worth it? And are you satisfied? All in all though, amongst these three, we just see the year of evolution. Although it doesn't look like much evolution has happened from a physical, visual standpoint, it's all been under the hood. It's all been in the hinge, which I think Samsung has been working on. It's been in the, the technology of the folding glass and so forth. But the hinge, I think, was the holdup. And it's finally a hinge that's worthy. I can only say up until now because time will tell. It seems to be the hinge of its time. Wholeheartedly, the Z Fold 5 is by far the best Z Fold if you're coming from a first buyer's perspective. If you want to save a couple bucks, you can go here and feel good. You can feel most confident here though. And this is just the pass. So hit the comment section down below and let me know where you land in the Z Fold arena. You guys already know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell. I'm about to do a little thumbnail.
It was always me versus me. It was never me versus you. Misunderstood. Get up, had to beat those eyes. Got up and I beat those eyes. It's understood. It was always me versus me. It was never me versus you. And now I'm good. Wake up and I do my part. Wake up and I do my job. Just how I should. It was always me versus me. It was never me versus you. Misunderstood. Get up, had to beat those eyes. Got up and I beat those eyes. That's understood. It was always me versus me. It was never me versus you.